You have successfully joined the web.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. Roll call, clerk.
Mayor Sereno.
Present.
Trustee Sadati. Here. Trustee Ponte will not be here, family illness. Trustee Nesner.
Here.
Trustee Huber.
Here.
Trustee Ruffin.
Here.
Trustee Lauricella is running late. Village Attorney Wallace.
Here.
Okay. I received some confirmation that Mr. Barishi Elmi has generously donated this inflatable tent to the village, and so we just have to have the highway department pick it up. It's worth about $10,000.
Excuse me, Mayor, can you talk a little bit louder, please?
Oh, wait a minute. Can you hear me now? Okay.
My hearing aids in, but you know.
Okay. Did you buy them from Mike? Oh, no. Okay. Next time, you got to get the ones from Mike. They're better.
I only got one in there.
So I'll start again. Okay. The village has received a generous donation from Mr. Barishi with his inflatable tent. And the estimated value of it is approximately $10,000. So the highway department will just have to pick it up at his site and we'll store it, I would guess, down at Vets Field. And when there's a need for it, we'll use it. So the clerk will draft a letter thanking him as such. That's that. The next item is the board should discuss the feasibility of a parks custodian, 10 to 12 hours a week maximum. This would be for twigs on the ground, garbage, sorting, getting the garbage into a orderly fashion, making sure the trash is out, because I think it's just unfair right now. Kevin, Trustee Huber's been doing it all the time, and it, you know, so I just think that's not it's an undue burden on him and any board member who happens to have that committee. So we can discuss it. I would just advertise for it and see who you get for someone who'd want that kind of job. I discussed this with Trustee Huber. Of course, he's in favor because it would mitigate a lot of other work that he's doing here in that park. So that's all. That's
Well, Mayor, just so you know, quite a few of us have discussed it as well, and I think we were all in agreement after our discussion as to how desperately we needed somebody on a regular basis to, so
Take care of those.
we even wanted to do that in lieu of another job, so I think I don't want to talk for everybody else, but I think we're all in agreement that that needs to be done.
So noted.
So you want me to put an ad in the paper?
Trustee Sadati, any objection to that?
No, I'm in favor for it.
Okay. Trustee Ruffin?
Also in favor of that.
Okay. So we can,
You got a question?
I have a
Yes.
question about going back to the donation of the tent,
yes?
only because I think you might need to have a board vote on that to accept it because it's
Okay.
$10,000.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to put an ad in the paper for a custodian for our parks.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So noted, I vote aye. Now we'll go back to the donation. Can I have a motion and a second to accept the donation from Mr. Barishi?
I'll make the motion. That you write a thank you letter.
And a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mayor votes aye. Following that trend, we discussed the feasibility of a dumpster at Vets Field because on any given night, there's a fair amount of garbage accumulated and refuse. So I thought we should get a dumpster, 4-yard dumpster down at that park, and at $180 per month, perhaps at least for July, August, September, and perhaps maybe October. And so 4 months.
Mayor, I would like to also keep the garbage carts that we have down there.
Oh, yeah, I'm not eliminating.
Okay.
I don't think we should
No,
eliminate it.
because we need them by the basketball court.
Right.
So if you take them away, they'll just throw the garbage on the ground. I mean, they do sometimes now, but.
And these dumpsters will be lockable? Like, we're not gonna leave them open?
Yeah, this is a locking dumpster. So to move forward, we would need approval on this item.
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Mayor votes aye. Thank you. Up next, Bain Park final design. I'll give this to Nancy Clark.
Did you miss an item?
Oh, excuse me. We need,
I believe we're going to move that to executive session.
okay.
We can introduce it and make the motion, just table it to executive.
Unless there's something extraordinary, I don't see a need, but we were just gonna follow the union rule and.
I know, but some information was given to me today by Craig that I just want to discuss before.
Okay. So noted. Okay, Bain Park final design. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay. All right, can you hear with this for your sound purposes? Okay. I'm Nancy Clark. I'm from Casey Engineering. I'm here with Melinda Kwok. Melinda Kwok is a lead designer for this project. We're actually talking about the conceptual design, not the final design for this project. Before we get into the conceptual design, I want to step you through some historical mapping. Dealing with this site has been something we've been working through with the village over several years to get to the place we are now. This map is a drawing from 2015. There was a proposed site plan and wetland map for the Bain Park future recreational area. That predated a lot of the utility improvements that were constructed, the new water and sewer. There's been a historical drainage way through that corridor. There was a broken pipe, it wasn't functioning, and the village had a desire to take the trench material, the soil from the water and sewer main trenches, and fill this former ravine, and then in place of the material that was taken from the roads, the trenches were filled with sub-base material for the roads rather than using the existing soil. So that actually saved the village a lot of money during the utility improvements. Instead of trucking the soil material away from the village, it was used to fill in the ravine that you probably all remember opposite Creek Court. This plan here, it was approved by Army Corps of Engineers, and there was stormwater coverage under the DEC general permit for the fill operation that happened there over several years. That stormwater coverage has now been terminated, the work is complete, and you have that more level surface that exists now. The next drawing is now that the construction for the utility improvements is done, that's no longer a contractor yard. We needed to understand the topography of the existing parcels so we could have a base map for design for what was being thought of for the Bain Park. On the right side of the drawing, this area here is the Bain Park parcel. It's actually two parcels. There's a little rectangle here that's a separate deeded parcel, and then this is the larger Bain. And then this here is the DPW yard. We surveyed the upper levels of the DPW yard just to get an understanding of the soil piles and the communication between this parcel and this parcel. And this drawing was then able to be used as a base map. The next drawing, at the same time when we were doing the survey for those two parcels I just spoke with you about, we looked at this here. This is on the lower part, just below the yard. When we were doing contract 4 for the utility improvements, there was a sewer that was crushed. From television inspection, we knew that there was a problem with that sewer and we wanted to replace it. We got agreement from the owner of Creekside Commons to put those manholes closer to the property line and even over the property line. There was already an existing easement, water line and recreational easement in Creekside Commons, and we've added sanitary sewer there. I included this map in the drawings. This shows you this corner here actually gets you to Bain Park. So when we show you the master plan, you'll see how there's an opportunity to have pedestrian connection, if you so choose, to this location. Next up, we have the Bain Park conceptual master plan drawings. This is the overall master plan drawing. There had been meetings with the village's Bain Park committee. We discussed desires that the committee had for the use of this property. The first thing we did is we pulled in a representative, conservatively large-sized multi-use field just for dimension lines, 360 feet by 150. You can see that pretty easily on that flat area with just a little bit of regrading, you can have a grass area that will support a lot of play. It's not going to be a field quality competition soccer field or anything, but it'll be a grass area where you could have pickup games. Around that, we have a meandering path throughout the property. This is the top of the ridge that exists there, and then you get the slope down to Creekside Commons. Over here, if you've walked around that site, you know there's a storm drainage manhole that is sitting on a plateau where we're calling to add some sections to it to bring it up. You can see from these numbers, we bring it up about 7 feet or so to realize this plan. In the corner, there's a playground area that's contemplated. There's a pavilion, some community garden areas. Over here, another possible pavilion, and then connection to that easement I just showed you. This brings you to Creekside Commons, and this connection here brings you to Leewood Arms. So this is the overall plan. Go up again. On Clapp Avenue, we also have a row of parking proposed. Right now, there's some very unofficial gravel-type parking, and we're looking to create, eventually, when the village has the funds to do it, create more paved parking that is painted and, with dedicated accessible spots, walkways, and then along here, Melinda, if you slide, Lower Henry Street, there's also a bank of parking there that would be paved We wouldn't have curb on there. We'd keep with the natural slope of the ground for drainage. We don't show a path from this parking because you can see the contours. It's a bit of a hill to get up there. A strong, able-bodied person would probably choose to walk up the hill to the shortest path, but we didn't put a proposed path because it wouldn't be ADA. In this area, we were looking for ADA paths. Now we'll focus in on the northeast corner detail plan. This area is a play yard, which we'll get into very zoomed in description there as the presentation goes on, where Compan is a play equipment specialist that the village has actually purchased play equipment from. There's 3 pieces of equipment. We've had some initial discussions with them about design coordination, their layout. We imported it into our drawing, and we proposed this as a fenced-in area so that there's some, corralling of children playing, so to speak. We have pathways in and out of the play area, and this is the community garden area that we had spoken about, and good connections to a pavilion when the village is able to build that. This, for perspective, is that existing stone that has the Bain Park sign on it already. And in this plan, we show the grading and some proposed trees. We haven't called out the vegetation. In the future, the village would probably do a specific planting plan. The next sheet, we wanted to focus in and speak about that connection to Leawood Arms. The project committee had talked about a desire to have connection for that neighborhood. Quite a few people live there. And we discovered that we could have a pretty gradual walkway down across the existing entrance road to the DPW yard. Currently, there's a fence like this that is in some difficult condition. We're proposing to remove that fence when the village is ready to do so, and install a new fence and a new gate. The gate is, where is it, Melinda? Oh, yeah. Oh, there it is. Yes. That's a little far for me. The gate is here. So this is the existing path in. We're not proposing to change that at all. This is the asphalt kind of crumbles and ends there. That would remain as is on the DPW yard. This mound here, see this shape? That means mound in the contours. We're told from village history that this area is where there was an incinerator when the DPW yard was a landfill before the 1970s. When that landfill was closed, there was an incinerator in this location. We're intentionally not cutting any of the grades there. You see, we are not changing the grades, and we're proposing a fence so that we can corral the uses of the DPW yard separate from the uses of the park. And then this walkway ties to the road, and we did soften. Right now, there's a sea of asphalt. This is actually the edge of the existing asphalt. It's there's a lot there, and so we're tightening up. And I had lengthy discussion with the village's DPW superintendent. We took in his comments. He was concerned about snow storage, which this is snow storage here, off from the pavement, and he was concerned about gate and keeping these uses separate and not impacting the place where the incinerator had been. The next sheet, this is the play yard that I had shown you on that northeast corner. This is a blow-up of that plan, and there's 3 pieces of equipment. This is a drawing that is by Compan, and Compan is very specialized at understanding things like fall zone, accessibility for play equipment, very focused things that I and KC are not specialized at. Compan knows that stuff. So we have these 3 pieces of equipment, and then another important bit of coordination that we work through, this is one of their details where this is what the ground treatment is below the equipment. It tells you the gravel and the wearing course, and then there's a rubber layer that they install around the rubber mat. There will be a concrete curb, which is actually a protection from the mower so that the grass area outside of the curb, it doesn't hit the expensive rubber. It instead is stopped by the concrete. And so this was some coordination information that we got from talking with Compan. The next bits of information in the presentation, Cindy Latino is going to take over for a few minutes. She's going to specifically talk about those 3 pieces of equipment. These are the project sheets that are available online from Compan. There's an awful lot of information there, but we left it all in the presentation. Cindy can go through it as quickly or as briefly as she chooses.
Okay, I'm just gonna flip those signs over that we. Okay. The one on the, oh, this one works here? Okay. So to begin with, I'm going to give you a little, again, background history on Bain Park. Bain Park has been on the board for many, many years. The committee that has finalized this plan started to meet around 2011 to come up with a concept that would enable us to take this large parcel of land, put it into phases so that we could develop it over time, knowing that in order to be able to develop it, we're probably going to have to go after grants. So by doing it in different phases, we could have the flexibility of going after larger grants if we could, but also some smaller ones where we could put some specialized areas into different parts of the park. So looking at this playground equipment, going back to the winter of 2019, was that correct, Todd? I'm losing track of time. We had an initial public hearing where we showed 3 concepts of potential playground equipment that we would like to put into Bain Park. It was open to the public. After the public meeting, we put it into the Grinnell Library, and we invited people to vote on the equipment. The playground itself is an inclusive playground. It is not a handicap playground. It is not what we would call a regular playground. It is an inclusive one, which means that the equipment is somewhat tailored to adapt to lots of people's needs, and but not specifically handicapped. So I wanted to make that clear because there seemed to be some confusion over that as we were moving ahead with the design and stuff. So going back to that meeting, we had the vote. The concept that you're seeing right down here on the right-hand side is the concept that was selected by the people that voted on it. You will notice in the lower corner, and I think we'll pull it up in a second, the original concept called for a water feature in the playground. The feedback that we were getting from people that had handicapped children, mostly those that had accessibility issues in terms of being in a wheelchair or maybe some mobility issues, they felt that they would prefer to see some type of apparatus put into the park that would allow them to have a more better way to be able to function in the park and have some fun on equipment. So with that in mind, we did switch out that water feature, which was basically troughs that, kids, it would be, you would have water onto it, but the water would just naturally drain into the ground. We weren't going to recycle it or anything. So we replaced that piece of equipment with a carousel. So now I'm going to take you through each piece of equipment. So this initial piece of equipment, the Rainier, is specifically for an age range of 5 to 12. It's got some challenging elements to it. It does have some inclusive elements. So you'll see in the lower portion there, you'll see it looks like almost like a hammock. on the one end there. That's a feature. There's some other things that you can't necessarily see from the pictures though too, but if you, you know, want to, we will have available to you all the specs online that talk about the various parts of the equipment that allow for handicapped accessibility, but also for that inclusive concept that we were looking for, so that all kids can join together and play in one area. Linda, you can go on to the next one too. That's still the same one. So as I said, that's that 5 to 12-year age range. This Sherpa is specifically designed for a 2 to 5-year age range. So we're trying to capture, again, that larger age range of making sure that we had equipment on site that addressed the needs of younger kids as well as older kids and provided some challenging elements to it. So again, this is a similar type of thing, has some similar types of activities that kids can do, but obviously on a smaller scale that addresses that toddler to preschool group. For preschool kids that are, you know, are more advanced in terms of their physical capabilities and stuff and their motor skills, that larger piece of equipment would be something that they would be challenged by and would be able to use as well. So then if you want to skip on to the next one. So this is the carousel that I was talking about. So we replaced this carousel in where we had that water feature. The carousel basically allows both kids that are in a wheelchair, kids that are not, you know, not in a wheelchair, you know, are functioning regularly, that they could get on, and it spins. So it is something that we felt was a compromise in terms of the questions we were getting from parents with kids with disabilities, and felt that it fit into the scheme well. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about the area of the playground. Although it looks like a very large area, and it is to some degree, when you start talking about the fall zones that you have to have for the various groups, you'll see right here that what Compan did for us was we were looking to go with how could we cover those fall zones with the specialized playground surfacing, which is a poured rubberized surface, and actually get the most bang for our buck. I was looking to pour as little as we possibly could. So that's why you will see that, you know, some places they did overlap it, so we didn't have to make as big of a pour and stuff. The playground also has lots of other areas where we'll be able to slip in some additional equipment that would be, again, of a more inclusive nature for kids with handicapped abilities. It would be things like musical instruments. One of the community garden features that we were looking at in putting into the one of the other areas in the playground would be something along the lines of a butterfly garden, so trying to capture the whole idea of, you know, science projects and things that kids would be able to take advantage of. If you really scan out a little bit, Melinda, if you can. So also going around in other areas of the park, we had tried to capture areas where we could insert something like, you know, a swing, but not necessarily have to be concerned about fall zones. So as you're seeing where you're going along, you'll see some areas where, say, picnic tables and benches. There's other areas where we might be trying to slide in something like a like an old-time porch swing that you would see, so several people could use it at once. It gives you the same sense of getting that swinging motion and enjoying, you know, the relaxing nature of it and stuff, but at the same time, it also, we didn't have to worry about the fall zones along with it, because it's much less, and we wouldn't have to have necessarily have to have the padding underneath it that would be required if we had put some large, you know, a large swing set into that playground. So I think that pretty much takes you through what we're planning on doing. Again, this has always been a project that we viewed as being a phase project. So going forward, we would try to add things as we could. I also put out here at the Bayne Park Playground is that adult exercise equipment that we envision being able to put around that multi-purpose field as well, so that we're trying to expand the use of the park in age range. So we're going from birth right up through our senior citizen population and trying to find something for everybody. So do I have any questions, or can I answer any questions?
I have a copy here that I took from the original plan, little thing, I blew it up pretty big. And here's a copy of it. It shows you where Clap Avenue is and Lower Henry. The only thing I have in the whole thing is, like, you're going to have things for kids, sandbox and garden and so on and so forth. And I don't know whether you know this, but around my neighborhood we have a lot of woodchucks, we have a lot of stray cats, and, you know, play boxes and play, that's what cats go for, you know? And I have them in my own, I can't even have a garden in my own yard, you know? And I have 3 stray cats I feed all the time, you know? But that's the only thing I see, really. Now, the other question I had is like, how many trees are we gonna have in here?
Well, I can be
Yeah.
honest with you, I don't know, it depends on what we have money for and where we are
That's not
with
this
that
question.
stuff.
Like this plan must cost a good buck and make this up, right? What would this plan cost, and you have an estimate what of course puts this playground in?
I think our projection was, I'm trying to think what,
Around 120?
yeah,
120,000?
We got money for the
for
playground.
the playground, we got money for this, but
It's more
maybe the
than
whole
that.
park itself over time,
Hmm?
it will be in the millions.
Yeah.
It'll cost over time. In order, if we were gonna do that whole park right now, it would probably cost about $2 to $3 million to do it. So that was why we decided to go with a phase project. So to address that question you had about the
This
gardens.
is just my property, you follow me?
Right.
When they built it in there, they put 10,000 yards to bring it up to street level, you know, all around here. And then it comes down, there's 2 pits they haven't put in there yet to catch the rainwater, which they're there, but they're never using yet. So my question is like, you can do this in different stages? Different stages? Okay. But the only thing I against really is for the garden for the kids, because that's gonna be maintained all the time. You gotta get sanitary material for
Okay,
it.
so let me go back to the gardens and talk a little bit about those. So what we're looking to create is raised planter beds, okay, so they would be higher. And they would be things like, a butterfly garden is really mostly flowers, and they're, you know, they would be perennials that we were putting in there. We planned probably, I think you can see the detail for the
I think
fence
so,
around
yeah.
it. So it is fenced around it.
That's an
So-
older plan.
Yeah, that's an older plan. But there is a fence around the outside of this community garden area, so that we would be able to keep it contained and keep the animals out as best as we could. You know, I mean, we had the same issues down at Vets as well with animals coming. In fact, I took
And
the
the backside of it, looking from
Yeah.
Clap Avenue over, it just goes, it just drops right off, you know?
Yeah.
Is there gonna be any more fill put in there or anything, or is that,
We hadn't really called
then along Lower Henry Street, that's gotta be all cleaned up and filled in also?
There's some minor grading to happen.
Yeah, but we didn't call for doing any kind of
There's only,
development down there. It would just be
there's only
left.
one drain that goes through that property, that's the one coming from Clap Avenue, and that comes from up in, in the 3rd Ward, all the way down, it runs year round, you know?
Yeah, it's in place and it's in function.
But I just wonder, like, what this is gonna cost, that's what I'm saying.
Overall, I mean, if we were to do the whole project right now, it would cost $2 to $3 million. I'm gonna say that's.
How much?
$2 to $3 million. If we were to do everything right now.
Yeah.
So that's why we chose to go with a phase project, that we felt that we could, over time, be able to expand and put different elements in by capturing smaller grants.
Because you're gonna need a fence around that outside perimeter all around there, so.
Around the
No, I had a
outside.
concept with this here. He gave me some numbers that I couldn't believe, you know, so if you go by this is the old first.
We knew it was gonna be expensive, and again, that's why we,
But you know, between you and now, this sounds a good project. But I bought stuff years ago, it's on Market Street, Falls View Park, you know. And there's something we really need in this village more than another playground. The fact that you had the burned out building, there was apartments there, stores, so on and so forth. And there's parking there. I mean, I had this little plan one time by Insight, you know, West Kentalmo, but they turned it down. But you can probably put 25 cars along there and have a little park on the other end, you know, or set that, and you overlook the falls. You know what I mean? That's what I'd like to see.
I think it's on.
Yeah, that's still in
It's still
discussion,
in-
because we
still
would
in
really like to see
Yeah.
something there as well.
And all that fill we put up on Clap Avenue, we could have had this job project. I had a guy to come in, drew the plans up and everything for it, and looked there for a map, but someone lost it, you know. But we used the same type of block that he used up at Reese Park, you know. And yes, of course, the village could have done most of it themselves, so, you know. That's the only thing I have is the sanitary for the gardens and for the sandboxes and
Right.
stuff like that.
I think we addressed it in terms of, you know, the type of equipment we're trying to put in there and stuff, to steer clear of the sandboxes, because it's a continual maintenance issue.
We tried that
So
down in
it's just-
Temple Field one time too, and
Yeah,
it didn't
we
work,
took
you
the
know.
ones out at Vets, so I know that for sure, so, yeah.
I did that same piece of property all my life in the village. I can tell you where everything went, you know, just that. But coming off of Lower Henry Street now, that's got to be all cleaned out, filled in too, you know. There's a lot of dead trees in there, but there's a lot of good trees there yet, you know, that can be cleaned up. But that's what I'd recommend to the board, truthfully, is think about Market Street. Because that'll bring assets to the village, you know, bringing people in, so on and so forth. And like the boathouse down there, you got a boathouse, but in summertime, there's no water in the creek. It's all swamp down here, the way the water just like it. Yeah. So that's my concern. I've lived in the village all my life in the same piece of property. So I'm really concerned what goes on down there, you know. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or things I could address? Okay.
Okay, I'll keep on. Melinda, if you could just go back to the master plan drawing. So Casey's design scope for the Bain Park, it's very good that the village is looking at a conceptual master plan. When doing environmental review for a project, it's important that the review be done for what the owner is contemplating for the full build-out for the job. So Casey has been retained to finish the master plan and also do a more detailed site design plan for the play equipment area. That northeast corner, we will provide sufficient detail for the area to be constructed by the village. The village plans to have Compan install that play equipment in or around August of 2021. As part of our scope, we'll be doing a long-form Part 1 EAF so that we can work with the village board to do the necessary seeker environmental review prior to any construction at the site. The EAF will just address the future improvements, and also New York State DEC stormwater permitting coverage will also be needed, as the total site disturbance for the build-out construction of this master plan will exceed 1 acre. So the next steps for this project is Dutchess County Planning. They're currently reviewing the village's CDBG grant application for Bain Park. The announcement is expected soon. The village has been given questions about the plan. They wanted all of the project information. It looks as though they have been working through their own environmental review, which is NEPA, required for projects with federal funds. So that's good. That's good news. There's a chance that the village is going to receive some favorable announcement. So we anticipate that the 2021 construction will mainly focus on that playground equipment area. The equipment's already been purchased. It's in storage in the village. And once the village gets the answer relative to the recent grant application, we expect that the village board will confirm the limits of the site work improvements to be included in the 2021 construction based on that available funding. For instance, will the village choose to build parking along the corner to provide service for the playground area? We would work with the village looking at the funding that was achieved and what the costs of various improvements on that corner would be. The concept plan is expecting that the village will do this work in phases as funding is achieved. The village has a long history of doing that creatively. When I think about this, I even think there could be some Eagle Scout projects in there with the community gardens and building some garden boxes, just as an example. I think of the village's park down near the boathouse. That has been expanded upon over years of effort as the village has gotten the ability to do so. So once we know what the village is planning for 2021 construction, Casey will continue to coordinate with Compan for the design coordination necessary for the play equipment area. We'll complete the design for the surrounding site improvements for the 2021 construction. We're retained to provide a design with plans and details that will be adequate for construction. The intent is that the village would be working with Compan for some construction, maybe working with your equipment and labor contractor, and maybe some village in-house forces. That's the type of design we'll provide. And then it's anticipated that the future improvements that have been discussed for the overall plan, that they would be done in time when the village can. But this provides a nice layout for the village to have a target for grading that needs to happen, for planting concepts, and for the trees that are shown on this plan. Trees are the larger circles, and then you get down to like a little hedgerow of plantings. Those aren't called out, but the village, when you're ready to do that, you would work with a landscaper for picking the appropriate plantings in the field, in the three-dimensional world, to suit the land that you have. So are there any questions or comments about the overall master plan? I know that the village wishes to get public comment into the plan, and that's why we're here. Okay, thank you for allowing us to provide this presentation for you. The village board has a packet of paper copies of all this information. If you'd like any of that electronically, just let me know and we'll email it to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, approval for the service agreement from Anthony Adamo of Managed Technologies of New York for Police Department Clerk.
Yeah, I received this from Commissioner Ferry, who will not be here tonight. And this is for their IT service for their department. They've had it going right along, and this is for going forward. I think it's a 2-year contract. Oh, 1 year. So what we'd like to do is have the board approve it.
John, can you talk a little bit louder, please? I mean, it sounds like everything's being muffled, I don't know.
All right.
Talk to the microphone, make sure everybody can hear.
The village attorney has looked over the contract, and again, it's the police commissioner needs it to be able to operate his equipment and his agency. It's in your packet if you want to look at it, board.
This is just the same one that.
It's the same thing.
Professional services contract.
So we need a motion to approve the IT contract so he can continue to get support from that group.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mayor votes aye.
Carried.
Okay, we had, next item. Next item is an approval to hire a full-time laborer in the highway department. We advertised, the board advertised for applicants. They got them, they interviewed them, and in consultation with the highway superintendent, they've made a selection. So do I have a motion to hire William Sanchez as a full-time laborer in the highway department?
I'll make that motion contingent on his lens review. I don't believe we got that back yet.
Correct. That's, for anyone out there, that's his driving report record.
I'll second it.
In a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who seconded that?
Trustee Sidoti. The mayor votes aye. Carried. Okay, next item is we'll start with this one. There's a resolution here. Clerk?
Okay, a resolution regarding Empire State Development Corporation grant funds application. Whereas the Village of Wappingers Falls Board of Trustees agreed to support the Wappingers Falls application to the Empire State Development Corporation, ESDC, grant funds program. And whereas the Village of Wappingers Falls plans to apply for downtown infrastructure enhancements through the ESDC's grant program. The upgrades will focus on East Main Street and the Village of Wappingers Falls, particularly historic buildings that have been affected by recent catastrophes like Goring Hall collapse in 2012, 2017 fire that engulfed multiple East Main Street properties, the 2020 fire on Market Street, and the COVID-19 financial crisis which forced many businesses and buildings to close down. And whereas the application will focus on acquiring funding to pay for this potential pilot project, the application will be asking for $18 million and to be allocated to roughly 10 buildings on East Main Street. Therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wappingers Falls hereby supports and authorizes the village grant writer to make application forthwith for the aforementioned ESDC grant on behalf of the Village of Wappingers Falls residents.
Discussion?
You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so if some of you recall, we had a Restore New York grant from the ESDC for $405,000, and it was to rebuild Goring Hall. It was from 2015. As time went on and the design changed of what we were going to do with that property, the grant at first was lowered tremendously to around $100,000, and now enough time passed where that grant is gone. And while working with Cindy, we were looking at different ways where we could salvage that grant and use it in some way. But in doing that, we found this new application through the ESDC for, as it says, downtown enhancements to a certain small area of block that has met with catastrophe. And listed there, you know, between Goring Hall's collapse, the 2017 fire, 2020 fire, and COVID, that East Main Street block has seen, we believe, enough catastrophe to make it eligible for this grant application. This is just the preliminary step, so basically what I'm asking here in this resolution is if I'm able to pursue this application. I need, obviously, the village and board's support to do that. The 18 million is an estimation at this point. That number could change by the time we actually submit this application. But the plan is to, you know, get feedback from the property owners in this area and ones that, you know, have been, again, affected by the various things, and to figure out, you know, a money amount that we can go to the ESDC with and apply for this money. So again, the point of this resolution is just simply you giving me the support to pursue that grant application and the information that will go with it.
I'd have a lot of questions about the grant. Does the money go to the owners? Does the money
Yeah, so
go
it
to the
would be-
village?
It would be allocated to them, but it would be we'd have to do agreements with them where, you know, they give us their renovation designs and what they plan to do, and we can, you know, you come back with them with, you don't pay for the whole thing. Again, when we were looking at some of the money for some of the things, we were thinking if we were to give each pay for 15% of their renovations, and how much, you know, depending on the building, how much that would go for. So it does need more research, and I've gotten support from a few of the people on East Main Street, but we want, and Knights of Columbus is also in this. We want to start to get a little more and get the ground running on it, but I didn't want to pursue it too much, you know, without.
Well, as long as it doesn't tie us to go forward, I mean, for you to look into it.
Right, so this is simply just to start the application.
Who's paying for engineers and
Yeah, we're not
all
even-
that
not there.
of that stuff? Okay.
But we wouldn't be doing the engineer work.
Right.
That would be coming from that.
This is just a proposal. It's similar to, you know, when we found it, it reminded me of the facade grant that the Business Association did in the early 90s, where we were able to capture an amount of money that would be able to be doled out to any business that wanted to participate in it. Again, we really got started on this because of losing the money for Goring Hall, and Mr. Barish is very motivated to rebuild right now. So, and one of the things that he asked for was that could we get it restored, that full funding. So that's kind of what prompted us to get going on this. The grant is flexible. We could spread out in terms of what areas we would like to focus on. So we could go up and capture some things on West Main. That might be something. Fallsview that Lawrence brought up is absolutely a project that could be rolled into that as well. So it's a very flexible thing. It's more that we have the designation because of all of the catastrophic events that have happened in that small area that we're able to do it. So we did have the building collapse up on West Main. We did have the sidewalk collapse up on West Main. And I'm not saying that we want to, give Central Hudson a pass on it, but things seem to be stagnant right now. And if, there's a way for us to get things moving, this might be an opportunity for us to take part of. But I think there's 10 properties we identified already. There's 10 properties we identified already, one of them being on Market Street, the 10 Market Street that went down. It also includes the drainage issue that the village has with that staircase that comes down from Reservoir down onto Market Street, that would be addressed in it, as well as the parking area behind, continuing down Reservoirs to improve that, to really make it look a lot better than it is looking right now and stuff. And there's a water connection issue that we would also tie into it as well.
Thank you.
So again, if that's something you'd like me to continue pursuing and moving on, that's what this is for. If not, I won't go any further.
Pursue in an exploratory way.
Well, I think we need to take a vote to give the grant writer the authorization as per discussed. So with that said, I'll entertain a motion.
Is this a matching grant, or not a matching grant, but
No, we wouldn't. It would be coming just from the ESDC. There would be no.
so to speak, so if we got awarded the 18 million,
It
that's
would be straight up.
nothing out of
And
our
it would be
pocket.
divvied up according to whatever we put in for. So if, each of those buildings has a renovation cost attached to it, they would get 15% of whatever that cost was.
All right. I'd
The
make.
village is acting as a pass-through.
Yep. I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Trustee Ruffin seconded. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. The mayor votes aye. Carried. Thank you.
Resolution regarding Green Innovation Grant Program application. Whereas the Village of Wappingers Falls Board of Trustees agree to support the Wappingers Falls application for the Green Innovation Grant Program, GIGP. And whereas the village aims to do a pilot project where it takes plant debris collected in Wappingers Lake and use it for fuel for a biogas anaerobic digester, which will produce power. The lake has been severely polluted by contamination runoff sediment from upstream, which has caused the invasive species of milfoil and water chestnuts to cover the 88-acre lake with their growth. The growth has only exacerbated the invasive species in the lake. This project would show other communities how they might deal with their invasive species as a valuable fuel for producing renewable power. And whereas the application will focus on acquiring funding to pay for this potential pilot project. The project will cost between $1 million and the GIGP grant would pay for 90% of the project cost. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wappingers Falls hereby supports and authorizes the village grant writer to make application forthwith for the aforementioned GIGP grant on behalf of the village residents.
I'll let the grant writer talk
Yeah, so
about
if I
this.
could just talk about this one again, this is preliminary just to allow me to begin this application. This was actually brought to us by a gentleman named Tim DeGraff, who wanted to be here and give a PowerPoint presentation. Due to an emergency, he actually couldn't make it, but we were coordinating with him to come at the next board meeting. But essentially, you know, we've all seen our lake, and we have the weed harvester out there and various people working with the weed harvester, but we don't have anything to do with the plants that we cut up at the moment. And so what this is saying is we want to run a pilot project with the Green Innovation Grant Program, where they would be able to actually use the water chestnuts and the invasive species that we cut up. They'd be able to use that in compost bins and possibly actually make energy from it. It's a preliminary stage. That's why it's a pilot project. And the gentleman, Tim DeGraff, apologize, would be able to explain the science behind that a bit better. But essentially, we just figured it would, A, be really good to help us clean up the lake, and B, if it was successful, it would be outstanding to be recognized by, you know, the EPA and certain organizations that were doing projects like this. That puts us in better light for, you know, further enhancements on the lake. And it is a 90% grant, which means 10% would have to come to us. But within the grant process, what I intend to do is put our salaries for the people who work on the weed harvester, even volunteer hours, we can put those hours in as our match, because those will be the people actually, you know, harvesting these plants. So with that in mind, it wouldn't cost the village too much, because the majority of our match would come towards salaries that we're already paying.
And you're paying
And we do.
the employees anyway.
Well, exactly, and that would be considered our match. So we figured it's something that, you know, it seemed interesting, and just something we could possibly pursue to help clean up the lake in any way. So it's just an application that seemed interesting enough to maybe try out.
Any discussion from the board?
So if it's $1 million, and we have to pay 10%, that's $100,000. Our weed harvester position does not come close to paying that.
Right, so another thing we were considering, depending on when we bought the weed harvester, we wanted to also put that in as possible match, the purchase of the weed harvester, since it's the machine we would be using. I believe that was $85,000. Somewhere around
Is there any way we can find that out before we?
Yeah, and we can, you don't have
The
to.
weed harvester was 85,000 and change. Like
The application's-
85.
No, I meant if we can find out if we can use that towards it.
Oh, I could maybe call and feel them out a bit and see if that's something we can do. But again, this resolution is simply for me to be able to do the grant and process it. So even if we pass this and it comes back no, and we decide later on, maybe this isn't something for us, we can kill it right there.
Okay.
But they just require resolutions from the board to recognize, you know, that I'm applying.
Is everyone comfortable perhaps voting for this pilot project?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Mayor.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mayor votes aye. Carried, thank you. Okay, we need a KC Engineering update.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Nancy Clark from KC Engineering. I'm also here with John Zarowski, a village engineer for the Village of Wappingers Falls. I'd like to first talk about non-water related projects. The village boathouse exterior improvements, the parking lot patio, concrete patio and site lighting. Most of that was built in 2021 by Woodland Manor. That's the contractor. Remaining construction work includes installation of parking lot light poles, The contractor is waiting for those lights to be delivered. KC has approved their submittal, and they just need to come in, and then they'll install them. So KC's efforts are nearly complete pending project closeout. Village Grease Trap Engineering Planning Grant. The engineering report, it includes a proposed grease trap interceptor code. It was emailed to the village on June 22nd for a cursory review. A next step for that project would be to send the report to EFC. They're interested in receiving it because their grant is paying for the efforts to create it. An attachment within that report, it includes the very short existing code section that deals with grease traps, and then the next section of the attachments is a much longer proposed code modification to pull in additional information related to grease traps, and more importantly, give the village building department an ability to enforce the grease trap requirements. So tonight, I'm hoping that we can get the village's concurrence to submit the engineering report to EFC. We anticipate that EFC may have some comments, and we also expect the village and the village's attorney may have some comments as well. We would gladly wrap those into the report before it's finalized, but we do need to get that to EFC. Should I wait till the end, or?
So you would need a vote for the grease trap?
Yeah, I underlined the action items. And then, so I'll keep going, I guess. The Bain Park Master Plan, we provided that presentation. Thank you for your time with that. The EPA Brownfields Assessment, the next steps for that project, there's really not a change from the last time we talked about it. We're expecting Phase 2 assessments at the Bleachery pending EPA approval to proceed for Bleachery and any other sites that are identified. EPA has been moving glacially slow. We have not heard back. The next projects that I was hoping to talk about tonight are water-related projects.
Excuse me, Kathy, we're getting into a different area. Do we have something from Corey relative to that brownfield?
Only that in discussions with them, depending on how long it'll take, they talked to me about, do we want to do a no-cost time extension just to move our deadline down, because our deadline's in October at the moment. But I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with you, but I did tell them in that phone call that we have been waiting on the EPA's response in order to access the property. So hopefully that might give them the kick they need to give us, the feedback that we've been waiting for. Besides that.
I think you'll probably get away from us. The deadline is October 2021. I mean,
but they're open. Like I said, they came to me with, hey, we want to go ahead with the no-cost time extension.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay.
But so, and again, and I did bring up to them that we're waiting on some stuff back.
Yeah, for years actually.
Yeah. So hopefully that might move some things along. People have retired at the EPA. Have been doing new people.
Yeah, it's been a change of staffing a lot. Yep.
Okay, so before we move, I'll entertain a motion for the village to submit the engineering report to the New York State EFC for review on this grease trap.
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Nays?
And the
Mayor
village,
votes aye.
the village attorney would also be reviewing the proposed local law. So.
Fine.
Okay, the other projects that I was hoping to talk about tonight are water projects. Mary Morris from the Water Board is here, and I saw that there were a couple of entries onto your agenda of some water topics, so I put my list together. The South Mizzier Prospect Street review of existing water and sewer, I guess I'll wait until that comes up later on your agenda. I just put it on my list because I knew it was something you wanted to talk about. The next one, USDA funding application for a water filter plant and other improvements. In 2020, Casey and the village together worked hard on preparing a USDA funding application for water filter building facilities and well pump improvements and 2 new water tanks. The preliminary engineer's report was submitted to USDA, and in April, USDA responded and to the village, and they identified that the village is eligible for an estimated rural development loan of up to $18.9 million, 1.75% interest for 38 years. USDA, Village, and KC have had conference call communications and phone call communications since recently in June, and last week the village representatives, mayor, water board representatives, and grant writer and KC, and treasurer, we got together following the conference call with USDA to really focus in on projects and figure out what the village might choose to do. As requested from that meeting, we were asked to provide a modified preliminary engineer's report. USDA has asked that it be emailed to them tomorrow. We have the work nearly ready to hit send. We're looking to talk with the board about it tonight. In that package, the projects that are being contemplated are a new water filter plant with well pump improvements, a village water interconnection to the town of Wappinger at Low Sea Road, village replacement of the Wendless tank, and replacement of the De La Verne water tank. And as those projects evolve, the scope may be reduced to just resurfacing the Wendless tank, but the full new tanks are in the package for worst case scenario. Possible water main replacement on North Mizzier Avenue, north of Trabuco Road, and up to just before Route 9, and possibly new water main installation on the west side of Route 9, where there's a break in a loop in front of the bowling alley, east of List Road, and and also along the west side of Route 9 in the vicinity of North Mizzier, south down to the carpet store. That would also create a large loop that would have hydraulic benefits for the village. USDA allows for flexibility for reducing the water scope and budget between short-term BAN and long-term USDA financing. What we're talking about currently is if the village has a desire to go forward with this offer of this potential funding, the village would provide a short-term BAN through another lender, and USDA would be available for long-term financing when you have a better understanding of what your costs are. The village is also pursuing possible grant funding, which could reduce the long-term USDA financing. Confirmed construction projects which would eventually be the subject of the USDA long-term financing would need to be built within 3 to 5 years. So what USDA says is when you go to permanent financing, they want you to go to permanent financing on real dollars. They don't want you to borrow more than you spend. So once you are in construction, once you're through bidding, you have actual dollars that you would know what your costs are. The intent now is to have a projection with a preliminary engineer's report of what you might need. So again, the USDA estimated funding package is up to $18.9 million for an interest rate of 1.75 for 38 years. USDA looks at the funding train of a 40-year window. So if it takes you 3 years to build what you're going to build, you'd then finance for 37 for the long term. If it takes you 5 years, you have 3 to 5 years, then you would long term for 35. So that's the way they look at it. Is there anything that you would like to add, Mary?
It depends on what level of detail the board is looking for at this time. We are asking, because the water commissioners, the water board cannot bond. Ultimately, any long-term debt would have to be authorized by the village board, although we would incorporate whatever was appropriate through water rates. We would obviously, long-term, look to possibly collect in alternative manners. We have put together our schedule of what comprises the 18 million. When Nancy and I were both last year together and we talked about the priority projects that we had, the costs we were looking at were significantly lower than the updated numbers. Construction costs have changed significantly since those preliminary numbers. And right now, in terms of the filtration plant, which we consider our number one priority, we are looking at an estimated cost of 4.3 million. Our interconnection with the town of Wappinger has gone from somewhere in the area of 800,000 to 1.48 million. The 2 water tanks are estimated at 8 million. That puts us at a total of $13,840,000. On the sheet that we have done for application for USDA in terms of water main improvements, the current estimated cost is at 2.7 million. That would bring us to a total of $16,540,000. That does not necessarily incorporate all the water main work we would like to do, but it is representative of what we consider the priority projects at this time. I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of money. It's a scary number in anybody's book. But the reality of it is we are operating on one well right now. We are not in compliance with the health department in terms of our operation. We have had to come up and submit a plan to the health department as to what our corrective measures are going to be to come into compliance, one of which was the filtration plant. We have put out as an alternative, as I mentioned at a prior meeting, that we would negotiate with the town of Poughkeepsie because we have an existing connection that in a backup emergency need, we could re-engage that connection, purchase water from the town of Poughkeepsie at a cost which would need to be negotiated in terms of cost per gallon, whether it was take or pay or how that was going to work. But it is currently our backup plan in an emergency situation. It is not a long-term plan right now. The long-term plan is to build the filtration plant, understand that we have this ability to connect, at the same time work on the interconnection with the town of Wappinger, which would be the next priority. We currently have, for the board's background, we currently have an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Wappinger that was established by the then Board of Trustees in July of 2019, talking about creating this loop, this interconnection for the purpose of emergency backup supply for the village, maintenance work if we needed additional water for maintenance work, and to provide water to the Woodhill Green condominium complex, which is across from Route 9, across from North Mizzier. That municipal agreement states 2 things that I'm not sure everyone is aware of. Number 1, it indicates that we currently have 3 active wells. That's not the case right now. We have 1 active well, which we hope to correct with the filtration plant. The other item that's in that intermunicipal agreement is that the village will front the cost of construction, and we will be reimbursed by the town at 50% of that cost. So
For the water main.
For the water main, for the construction.
Yes.
So if we're looking at a construction cost of 1.48 million, 50% of that would be reimbursed by the town of Wappinger. Maybe specifically the United Water District, but certainly
Of a large portion of it.
Right.
The pressure relief valve would benefit only the village, so that wouldn't be shared, but the water main would.
Thank you, Nancy,
Yeah.
for the clarification.
Yeah.
Essentially what that means is if we were to borrow 18 million from USDA, or if we were to indicate to USDA that we wanted 18 million, we would construct, we would get reimbursed from the town for whatever portion was theirs, and that would immediately come off the top. We are coming to you tonight without belaboring too much, and certainly if you have any questions, I'm here. There are certain aspects of what we're doing that need to be assessed, evaluated, and improved. This application was made at a point in time prior to some of us being here, but we're acknowledging that these things still do need to be addressed. USDA needs an answer by tomorrow, which is a commitment on our part, and Nancy, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we intend to pursue these projects that we put forth. However, recognizing that we are only at 100% design with 2 of those items and minimal design on the other ones, we don't really know where these projects are going to take us until we get to full design. USDA has acknowledged that if, as Nancy said, we're looking at $8 million for 2 water tanks to be replaced, and we decide we only need to rehab the Wendless water tank, that would significantly reduce that borrowing, and I'm just going to throw out a number, $2.5 million for Wendless rather than the $8 million for the 2 water tanks. So that would be our commitment. So the $18 million number is what they will give us, but we're looking to reduce it obviously as much as we possibly can. When we ran the numbers for the loan for 38 years for 1.75%, we're looking at somewhere between $210 and $300 per year per customer for 38 years. Until we reach final numbers.
Increase?
I'm sorry?
Increase?
Increase, yes, an increase, which is a recognition of the capital aspect of this. This is something that obviously has to be evaluated. We are going to keep that number. We want to keep that number. We expect to keep that number as tight as we possibly can. As Nancy stated, USDA will not fund construction immediately. We would have to go out and borrow for that over a short period of time. We would need to complete all of the projects within a period of 3 to 5 years, and at that point, whatever we had fully spent on those projects, we would then go to a long-term borrowing of 1.75%. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I know in recent years, and as recently as the last bond the village did, we were able to borrow for less than that. But I can't guarantee that 5 years from now, when we were going to long-term, or if we were going to do this in stages and go to long-term for any one of these projects, that 1.75% would be the rate at which we would be able to borrow. It could be less, it could be significantly more. What we have right now is a commitment for USDA for 1.75 for 38 years if we are willing to go ahead with these projects with them.
$250 per
customer
per year.
Per year for 38 years.
So some people, if they only get a $100 bill every 2 months,
that is true. As an
you're going to average out to adding an additional $40 to $45 on that bill.
Yes, that's correct. Now,
we're looking into the option of just doing a one-time
assessment.
I understand that, but that assessment at $250 a year, if you divide it by 6, we have 6 payments a year, and you're tacking on $45 on a $100 bill.
Yes.
We all know what that percentage is, and
Yes.
I'm not quite sure
Do
if
just
that even
want to add in that the most recent bond that we did, in 5 years, the interest rate went up to 1.5, so further out would probably go up even more.
It is important, I think, for everyone to understand that a cost of water, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
It is important for everyone to understand that an annual cost of purchasing water, and when I say purchase, it means the facility is there and all the things that it takes to upkeep it, which include the capital costs of $100 a year, is unrealistic. And I'm not going to say unreasonable, but unrealistic in the grand scope of things. We have built a water plant that is going to start to age and is going to need capital upkeep. We are on one well. And I'm not saying you should authorize all of these projects even if that's what we want you to do, but I would like you to understand the reality of providing water to village residents. We were in a position before this water plant was completed that we were buying water from the town of Poughkeepsie. And this is no reflection on anyone in the position of municipal authority in the town or the city of Poughkeepsie or the town of Wappinger, but anytime you get into a situation where you're purchasing water from another municipal entity, you are to a certain extent at the mercy of whatever cost they want to charge you, which includes, and is going to include, their capital upkeep. At worst, it could include a take or pay situation. So when the health department authorizes water use, water purchase, water function, they're looking at your highest consumption scenario. So if we use 500,000 gallons a day, on an average, even on days we only purchase or need 300,000, the joint water board may only authorize to have a take or pay, which means we're paying for 500,000 gallons a day whether we use it or not. It may be that we can negotiate it at a lower cost, it may not. Their reasoning, and it's not an unreasonable situation, is that if they're holding that water for our purchase and can't sell it to anyone else, they should be paid for it. So without supporting our water facility and our ability to supply water to our residents in the manner in which the health department expects us to do it, in the manner in which we need to keep the upgraded elements to our facilities, we're either going to face a situation where things are going to degrade so badly that the capital costs of repairing them or replacing them are going to be significantly more than $250 a year, or we're going to be in a situation where we have to start negotiating costs for that water purchase from someone else. And I say this as someone that has worked in the county for years and in my position taken over 20 some odd water plants where they were on the deferred maintenance program. And our ability to repair those facilities, replace them, and get them upgraded, the costs were significant. And we were indicating to the customers a significant cost increase because they were on this deferred maintenance program. So I am here to share Nancy's information, to impart with you the water commissioner's information that we've learned, and not only what it's going to cost, but my personal feelings that we cannot always defer these costs because they are significant, especially in a utility that we're providing. But it is ultimately up to the village board whether they want to do this. Right now, I would ask that you would allow us to pursue it, and if we have to scale back, or if you want to provide directions on how we scale back or a limited number, we can go back and review it. But for good or for bad, we've got to make some commitment to USDA tomorrow in order to continue to have access to these funds.
Are you taking into account too with the sewer and water go together? I mean, if you buy a gallon of water and a gallon of sewer, it takes until you double that.
And this would be, no, because this is capital. It would not go through the water use. It would be completely separate and would not include or be affected, your sewer charge would not be affected by these dollars. Now, the other thing I would like to add is one of the things I feel is lacking, and the village commissioners have talked about this, is that there has not been any kind of recent evaluation as to whether everyone in the village is being charged based on their appropriate number of service connections. There have been a number of questions raised at our prior meetings whether everyone is paying if they've got 5 connections and they're only being charged for 1. So one of the trustees has volunteered to undertake looking into that, pulling together a database to look at what the properties are being charged and make sure everyone's being charged correctly. The next step would then be to look at our current out-of-district customers, see what the rate schedule is for the out-of-district customers and the larger commercial customers, and make sure we're following correct AWWA recommendations as to how the various different types of units, such as commercial, are being charged. That being said, it may change and impact that $250 because we're just taking that as a global average village customer, 1,600 customers. That does not take into account that there would be a shift, and an appropriate shift, that larger commercial customers and possibly out-of-district customers would share that part of the burden and in a different way than an average single-family customer.
Ask another question? You mentioned before Loshi Road, the village is going to tie into the water system at Loshi Road.
It's one of the things that we're contemplating as part of this application.
Yeah. There's no way you're going to think about town of Poughkeepsie water anymore.
We would maintain the connection. Ultimately, the ideal Eden situation would be a loop between the town of Poughkeepsie, the village of Wappinger, and the town of Wappinger. That way, any municipality in distress has the ability to loop. But
we had a very, very serious problem with the town of Poughkeepsie. When they put that chloride in, if you live in the building, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of people that had to replace their hot water heaters, this, that, and everything, because they ate that out. And if Dick Maruzzi was here, God bless his soul, he'd tell you the same thing. Because he was one smart engineer, he designed it. The one thing I'm saying now is that, you know, if they had a plant for $350 million, this plant up there now costs us almost $7.5 million. And now you're saying you gotta put a filter plant in now too? You know, you got one well working? Something's wrong here. And one more thing. There was a problem, number one well had iron in it. And the iron can be taken out. Is that what you're gonna put this filter system in for?
That actually is the primary problem that is leading us to the filtration, is we're having an iron and manganese issue. And that's why some of the wells have been taken out of service.
Very scary.
That's why we're here. Here? Yes.
Mayor, Mary and Nancy have eloquently laid out the problems that obviously, you know, we're in right now. And I think it's maybe critical that we have a public hearing just on the water issue and get a mass of people out, because I think it's important that we get behind this. I think it could be, I know it's a long term, I know it's a lot of money to hit people with a bill, but it sounds to me like it's something that we need to get behind, and we need to get behind it now. I know Mary needs an answer, you know, for that funding, but I think that after, you know, we give her that answer, or you guys give her that answer, I think, you know, maybe in the next month, we should announce a public hearing just on this issue and see if we can get a lot of people out through, because I think the whole village really should know, and I don't think they really know.
I think you're right.
Thank you
That's
for
a very important issue, water.
I'm just going to give you my point of view here. Maybe some board members share it, maybe they don't. We're here because the water department does not have that capability to bond this. If they did, we wouldn't be here. They would have probably done whatever they wanted to do and then told us, or told us before, but said, you know what, we need to get this. We have an opportunity for a funding capability. We need 4 or 5 things done. So, being in contact in the water board meetings that I've gone to since I've been elected, these items come up. It's up to the board to determine, number one, do you want to live on one well? Do you want to live, with not knowing if you're going to have potable water if in fact well number 7 goes down? Number 2, do you want to be able to upgrade those deficient systems and improve it? Now, they can argue about the cost and whatever. The thing is, are the pieces of the puzzle going to line up? Now, we're in a tight spot with relative to timing. Fine. And then, but USDA needs an answer so that we have the capability to fund this and then look for grants on other aspects of what project we're going to do. I don't think this is a case right now of can we do it, can't we do it? I think there's 2 or 3 items here that have to be done. And so we can have the public hearing if the board wants to have the public hearing, and I think they probably should have it. But there are just some things that, you know, need to be done.
Great.
So, Mayor, could you
Yes,
just,
Mayor?
Yes.
I think the village board should get together and listen to what she's saying, because water is the most important thing we have in this village. Without water, you don't have a village.
Could you just tell us again exactly what this will allow you to do tomorrow? Can you just tell that to us one more time quickly?
I'm going to let Nancy elaborate on that. if that's okay.
USDA has provided comments on the preliminary engineers report, and they've asked for responses to those comments, and the village board, or the village's answer as to whether you want to proceed with this funding or not. USDA would lock you in at that 1.75 for the 38 years. The USDA people that we're talking with, they're preparing the pool of federal funds that are established on August 1st. So that's why you're up against it for July 1st. They need to be serious about who's going to be included in that pool. If you decide to not do it, they wouldn't set aside that portion of the pool of funds for you.
So this is,
And that's the difference. That's the reason why.
so this is work that's already been done, that's ready to go, though, on your end, Nancy?
On our end, the water filter plant, that's the next item on my list, but we submitted that to the Health Department on May 14th. We received minor review comments on June 15th. Design edits and responses are in progress. The Village Water Board has voiced that they consider that a priority project, and we anticipate from talking with the Water Board that there's a desire to target 2022 for that construction, but that is pending Village confirmation of funding sources. The other project that we talked about tonight, the tanks, so far the Village Board, the Water Board and the Village Board, they authorized us to do 30% design for the Wendless tank replacement, and where we sideburnered that for a bit, figuring out what the priorities were for the Water Board, but we anticipate that this summer we'll be providing that 30% design to the village. We know that the village is soon to, if not, they might have recently inspected the Wendless tank. Once we get that tank inspection, we're planning to write a brief summary report comparing the results of the prior couple of inspections. The Water Board inspects the Wendless tank interior and exterior every 3 years, and you can see trends, and we will just the facts summarized so that the Water Board would have an idea of whether they wish to rehab that tank, and we'll continue to talk with the Water Board about hydraulics and your low pressure system. Do you want to instead of rehabbing the Wendless tank, replace it at a higher elevation?
Not to cut you short, Nancy, but so tomorrow, us approving this for tomorrow.
We're ready to go.
It's just ready to go, and it simply is letting them know that we plan on making, whether it's $5 million worth of repairs or $18 million worth of repairs, we do plan on making repairs.
Right.
We're not obligated to make all $18 million in repairs. That'll be subject to whatever comes out in future reports.
It is.
That's a changing scale.
Tomorrow we would resubmit the 577-page report, and it would include all of the projects that we talked about, Mary and me, tonight. And it would say that the village is interested in the 18 million.
Interested but not obligated.
It would be a commitment to proceed forward, but your permanent financing would not happen until you have concluded with what you're building and actually either have built it or have gone to bid with it. And we asked significant questions of USDA because we knew that these would be concerns, and they assured us that there is flexibility. You can reduce your scope, you can adjust your scope, and so you would be going to permanent finance, with long-term finance with what you actually built.
Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, does tomorrow basically lock us in at the 1.75? Is that what it's all
Yes.
about?
Yes.
Is that the critical nature of it?
Yes.
Okay.
It is us showing, it's
Okay,
us
good.
demonstrating
That's-
an act of faith that we plan
Yeah.
to proceed.
So
So
that's the important thing to me. I mean,
not
because-
I'm sorry, Paul, not proceeding with it, yes, we get the 1.75 guaranteed by the commitment tomorrow. We have tried, and Nancy and Casey Engineering have acted on our behalf. Much of this was started before a few of us were members of the water board, and obviously before some of you were trustees. So this plan has been in there, USDA has been acting in good faith. They're now asking for a good faith response from us. So understanding the deadline, we have tried to not put the skids on, but at least limit the scope of commitment by saying we have 4 main projects: the filtration plant, the interconnection with the town of Wappinger, the water tank or tanks, and water main work. Within that, we have indicated we want flexibility. If we can find a change in method or an alternative to the design that would allow that 4.3 million for the filtration plant to be less, we're going to work on that. If we can,
That's really what we want. I
That's-
think
that's where
we're
we're
all
at.
in agreement that something needs to be done and
Yep.
something needs to be done now. I just don't know I haven't been in on your meetings, so I don't want to sit here tonight and lock us into something. I want to know that there's the flexibility to have a better plan, a changing
Yes.
plan.
Reduce
That's
cost.
all I need to know,
Yes.
is that we're not locking into something that
we're not locking into an $18 million borrowing.
And USDA also knows that the village is actively pursuing other funds. You know, there's lots of talk of infrastructure money going directly from the federal government to municipalities, and key projects for that are water and sewer.
Right.
So, but the timeline for that, you won't have any information till at least November or December. And USDA expects that if you're successful in getting some of that funds and you choose to put it towards these projects, it's going to reduce the amount of money you're
Right.
requesting from them in the end.
Sun for power. That's what you put where the well fields.
You want to,
So we're, okay, we do want the village board to give us the green light. The last few projects I had on here, I already talked about the filter plant. I already talked about windlass water tank. The interconnection, just a minor update there. The Dutchess County Department of Health, New York State Department of Health, they've approved that design. The project is ready for construction bidding upon request and authorization by the village. We understand that you're going to wait on construction. We expect that from the discussions, and that talking with the water board, there's a possible desire to target 2022 for that, pending village confirmation of funding sources. That might be a good project for the funds that the federal government might make available for the municipalities. That's the end.
okay, so,
Mayor, can I ask another question?
Sure.
Put our water plant up here now, they put all those solar panels, and that was the specified field that we were gonna use for another well. The only way you do that is you move up the other end or something. 'Cause number 3 well, that's not in line out, is it? Just number 7?
number 7 and 7A are the only ones on
There's
it.
no way you put another well up here unless you put solar panels back in the far end or take them out.
Wells 4 and 5 still are there, and we can redevelop them with this filter plant. We'll be able to bring them back online, filter plant. And they were very good wells.
At the end, the filter, yeah.
Right. That's
How long will that take now?
The filter plant, a couple of years for construction, probably a few years before it's online for construction.
2 years before it's online?
I'm just guessing, because we've kind of missed this year's construction, so we won't go to next year. So
That's quicker than that.
well, we've got the plans ready to go, but it's a complex
The
facility.
plant was supposed to have a filter, it says it in when you put it up. They put that violet, system in.
Well, again, the wells exist. Wells 4 and 5 exist, they just need to be redeveloped.
Yeah.
So, and once we have the filter plant online and they're redeveloped, then we will have wells 3, 7, 7A, which are considered one well, wells 4 and 5. So I will have 4 possibilities for water. I'll have more water than we know what to do with.
All things being equal, if the board approves,
Well, I think myself personally, the well should come before anything else in this village. As far as parking, parks, or what are you gonna do? Get the wells operating. That's what you gotta do.
With-
And to get 4 and 5 back online, you need a filter plant because of
Yeah,
the
well,
quality of that water. Yeah.
That should have been in the last, we spent that 750 million.
with all things equal, you would, if you approve,
I've lost track of it.
if you would approve,
This is Mary down there. What's she gonna do?
if you would approve the premise, the basic idea here for USDA, this financing arrangement, and understand it, that gives us, the village, this funding authority, okay? So then you could have the opportunity to, if you have 1 or 2 of these projects ready to go, which we are close to, and have one at least ready, we have another one that's also ready, but it's not part of the water, it's the sewer. You would then do the project, you have the ban, and then go to this financing when you've completed this project, that project. So you would go out to bid probably October, November, when it's winter. In the winter months, you tend to get the best price. You never want to go out to bid in the dead of summer when everyone's busy. You'll get the bid, but it'll be much higher. But you'd go out to bid, you'd get your bids, and then you could start construction sometime next year.
Now, let me ask another question. Suppose that well went down tomorrow morning. Now you got an emergency, right?
Yep.
We're hooking up
a hose. We're hooking up a hose.
You get water from Cal Wappingers, but they get their well, it's the same place we get our water from. That's, you know.
Right, but this is why we're pushing forward with the water department's plan. We didn't vote anything down yet, so we have all the information and we're gonna make a decision.
I'll tell you, when they had the Delahanty fire down here years ago, remember Delahanty burnt down there? And the big well, they were supposed to put an aquifer tank to come in and catch the water to bring it up. And we went, our well, we put in that fire, Delaware Avenue, come way down, and one over here in the DeMarco place come down, just fighting that fire. So it's 17,000 gallons to fight that fire, and they had to build them all back up again. But now they sold that line here, so if there's a fire down in the business district, they can tie into that.
Well, they did the dry hydrant too, but that's...
That should be checked, make sure that's working.
So, with that said...
Oh, boy.
With that said, any more comments?
I don't mean did it, but forget about that sand.
With no more comments, I will entertain a motion that we move forward for the USDA funding as presented.
I'll make the motion, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
That's for the 1.75.
But it's
No.
it's up to 18.9 million.
The 1.75 is the interest rate.
Yes.
Oh, we probably should.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Oh. I'm just thinking, I gotta run out there and put my windows up.
Really?
I think so. Mayor Sereno.
Aye.
Trustee Sidoti.
Aye.
Trustee Nesnick.
Aye.
Trustee Huber.
Ah,
Trustee Ruffin.
Aye.
Trustee Larissella.
Aye.
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. So,
covers that. Take a piece, boys.
we have a discussion for South Mizzier Prospect Easements, Wood Hill Green. Attorney Wallace.
Okay, a few months ago, I went out to the location with Mayor Sereno and representatives of the Water Department and Department of Public Works because there's a slow leak in a water main that services 5 properties in the vicinity of South Mizzier and Prospect Street. I was in discussions with Mary Morris and John Zarowski about preparing legal documents because it came to my attention that there were no easements of record for the water and sewer lines that service these properties.
Did all these people we've been...
I prepared the legal documents.
I left them this much.
I prepared legal documents for the owners, but before approaching them, I realized that the map did not depict where the water line or the approximate location of the existing water lines. And I really wanted that. So Mary and I, Nancy Clark and I have been in discussions, as well as Mary. Nancy, do you want to add anything that I missed?
I think the water board has requested that this be on their next agenda, which is July 12th. The water board had a desire to talk about what the village is requesting to do. When Craig called me, you know, the simple solution would have been we had a proposed plan which had a potential fix that was discussed with the water board a couple of years ago. We would have taken the proposed plan off from it, and I asked Melinda to coordinate with the water department to get an idea of where the existing water, the approximate location, and we would provide that plan. But we were kind of stopped in our tracks because the water board and the water department wanted to talk about what is the game plan.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Nancy's saying, we got sidetracked because the water board really wanted a solution and a workable plan in place, engineered plan in place, and I was looking at it more from the abstract to at least get an easement of record so that we could get on these properties and serve and maintain these lines that are ours in case there's an emergency. And it's unclear as to whether or not there is an emergency, but what we do know from our discussions with everyone is we are losing water. There's a water waste at this particular location. How much, nobody knows, but there is a discernible waste going on, according to Pete Paggi.
Just to give a quick little bit of background, this is a problem that's been going on for a number of years. It involves 5 properties between Prospect and South Mizzier. The problem is that there have been various and assorted leaks, and the operators are concerned, as are the Board of Trustees and the Department of Public Works, that we are working on private property when there is a leak that needs to be fixed on these water lines. Nancy would give a much clearer description on how the lines are running, We've talked about, asking these property owners to gain access different ways, but there are difficulties with that. And it was, my understanding is, because a lot of this is historical, because it's been going on for so long, is that the prior mayor made a verbal approach to these 5 property owners to at least get some acknowledgement of the problem and get some type of agreement that we could access our lines through the property, and one of the property owners flatly refused to grant an easement. Did not want anything on his property touched, accessed, or anything in any way. I don't believe he legally has the right to deny us access to our water line on his property, but it's always cleaner, as Craig indicated, to have a formal easement. To bring us forward a little bit, the water commissioners discussed this specifically at the February meeting, and there was the discussion indicated the intent to have a resolution that said we did not want to work on private property if there was any other solution. However, the resolution in the minutes recorded did not cleanly state that. We met out at the property. Craig was indicating that he would pursue information and speak with the property owners. So now we're at a point where I guess my question is, because the attorney, Craig as our attorney, and Casey Engineering is going to meet with the water commissioners at the July 12th meeting and the operators to kind of understand what are our options to specifically address the leak. I think what Craig is raising is the more global question of having easements, and I guess my question to Craig, because I wasn't aware that this was going to be on the agenda until yesterday, is what we're asking for, or what you're asking for, consistent with easement agreements we have with water lines that go across other people's private property in the village? Are we just trying to clean up and get this area into conformance with other similar areas in the village?
Yes, we're looking to rectify an omission that was previously made by accident, obviously. But in order to do so, an attachment of a map has to depict where, approximately where the lines are, so that these people who are signing these away on these easements understand, and they're on notice of where the village might have to cross and service.
Would the easement give the village the right but not the responsibility to access?
Absolutely. The language says that. It says that the village has the right but not the responsibility. Okay? It explicitly says that in these easements that I did prepare, and I circulated to everyone. But, we can always, because it's private property,